Happy early Cinco de Mayo. Today we're discussing the Ahuiateteo. Good morning, sunshine. Happy Monday, and welcome back to Tiger's Occult Books and Research. I'm your friendly internet paranormal researcher and investigator, Dr. Morris, and today, with Cinco de Mayo so close, we're going to cover a specific group of entities from Mexican mythology, the Ahuiateteo. I figured we ought to cover something Mexican because, sure looks like somebody got started a little bit early. Referring to our main reference text, Illy's Encyclopedia of Spirits and Bain's Encyclopedia of Spirits and Ghosts in World Mythology, and a smattering of further research, I'm going to tell you where they come from, how to identify them, what they do, we'll address any ethical concerns, and then we'll make sure we go over safe interaction with the entities if you should ever come across the Ahuiateteo during your travels. So let's get started with the origins. The first known documentation of these entities come to us from the Codex Borbonicus. Unlike most other codices we have from the Aztec Empire, this was actually written before the Spanish conquistadors made it over there, so this is actual genuine Aztec writing about Aztecs. What's even more fascinating is the fact that the early Mexican civilization didn't have lettering the way we understand it today. They had pictographs. So the Codex Borbonicus is a 46.5 foot long sheet made of amatl paper, which is a very specific form of bark paper that was used by Mexican civilizations since pre-contact times. Interestingly enough, when the Spanish conquistadors came, they banned production of amatl and they destroyed many amatl codices, but they weren't completely successful, as evidenced by the continuing existence of the Codex Borbonicus. After that, we've got the Codex Borgia, which was written sometime in the 16th century. Written on animal skins folded into 39 sheets, the precise date is up for debate, but we do know that page 47 in section 14 depicts the Ahuiateteo, also known as the Maquil to na Lacah. So we're going to be drawing our information from interpretations of the codices Borbonicus and Borgia because, as you'll see, the only primary sources are merely illustrations. So let's get into the physical identification methods. Now, this is another instance where these entities are referred to as gods in the literature, but for the purposes of our analysis, I'm not entirely convinced that's the case. When we think of gods in the modern sense, we think of the three omni terms: omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Granted, this only holds true for a handful of gods, mostly creator deities, but generally speaking, Class 7 metaspecters should be able to meet at least one of these criteria. The most common single omni criteria most Class 7 metaspecters meet is omnipotent, that is, having absolute power, able to do anything consistent with its nature. These entities are significantly more limited, so I'm not going to classify them as Class 7. We've got this image from Harvard that shows us page 4 of the Codex Borbonicus, where the Ahuiateteo are referenced with several other entities like the Huihuicotl that show us that it's definitely a spirit, to be sure, but not exactly something we'd consider to be a god, the be-all, end-all entity that we think of today. Instead, the Ahuiateteo have very specific lanes of influence. There's 5 entities here that we're really looking at. The first is Maquilchachit, 5-flower, the chief of the Ahuiateteo, and the spirit of gambling, music, and dance. Next, we have Maquiltochli, 5-rabbit, the spirit of drunkenness and insobriety. Third, we have Maquilquetzalcoatl, 5-lizard, spirit of sexual excess. Fourth is Maquilcoatzcoatl, 5-vulture, the spirit of gluttony. Lastly, we have Maquilmali, 5-grass, the spirit of laziness and sloth. As we can see, these 5 entities are more or less the Aztec equivalent and spiritual embodiment of Christianity's 7 deadly sins. Therefore, as these entities were never human and they're not true omnipowerful metaspecters, we're going to classify them as Class 5. Based on what they're directly linked with, we're going to describe and identify them as vice spirits. Before we move on to the folklore tales and legends, I just wanted to remind you, if you like the work we're doing here, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you'll get notified every time we cover a new entity, or even better, go ahead and join the Discord server for some interesting conversation. We've got one of like 300 people on Earth that can read Sumerian. We got a guy who corrects my terrible Japanese pronunciation. We've got another who corrects my awful Vietnamese pronunciation. Come on, join us, and you can help me correct my pronunciation in your specialty, especially Aztec pronunciation. I am struggling here. Anyway, on to the folklore tales and legends. The Ahuiateteo aren't exactly the personification of these excesses or deadly sins as we know them in the Christian-influenced sphere. Instead, these entities are spiritual enforcers of consequences against such behavior. Illes points out that the Aztecs considered the number 5 to symbolize excess. 4 is fine, but 5 is too many. The Ahuiateteo were in charge of enforcing punishment in a number of particularly gruesome ways. They'd administer venereal diseases, hemorrhoids, boils and pustules, physical deformities, severe infections, so on and so forth. In order to overcome these punishments, the Aztecs would offer penance or complete specific rituals during the Feast of Flowers to be forgiven by the Ahuiateteo so they could go on about their life, having learned a valuable lesson about overindulgence. Speaking of, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope. That's. Come here, Tiger. Give me that. Now, don't argue with me. I'm just preventing a visit from 5 Rabbit. You'll thank me in the morning. So let's move on to the ethical considerations here. I mean, look, they're spirits of moral punishment. Chasing down punishment spirits to avoid punishment is... I mean, come on, we're all moral people here. You can see where this is going and why that is a terrible idea. Besides, if basic ethics isn't good enough reason for you, the Ahuiateteos seem to work for Tsitsimi, which I would actually classify as Class 7 metaspecters, considering they are giant skeletons who are said to eventually descend to Earth to devour all of humanity. Keep in mind, there's always a bigger fish. In the spiritual environment, it is generally wise to avoid making yourself a target of said bigger fish. So when it comes to the moral question of should we go hunt the Ahuiateteo, in a word, don't. That being said, let's touch on the safe interaction protocols. Aztec mythology says nothing about an actual physical interaction with any of the Ahuiateteo, so that won't really be a concern. It's entirely possible that these entities don't even exist on our plane of reality. Rather, they exist in a very closely aligned parallel dimension with the power to influence this reality. The Aztecs felt the best way to stay safe from the Ahuiateteo's wrath was to practice Nilia, or the middle way. Enjoy food, drink, festivities, and all that, but don't cross over into addiction or social disruption. If you enjoy these things without making it a problem, you basically stayed invisible to them, and you wouldn't really concern yourself about facing their wrath. Anyway, that's about all the information I was able to dig up on the Ahuiateteo. I hope you found it informative. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can find me on all the regular alt-text sites as well, depending on how tight you've got your tinfoil hat. If you have an entity you need me to cover, or if I really borked the pronunciation of something, go ahead and let me know in the comments section down below. Or, better yet, come join us in the Discord server. The link is also in the description box down below. Till next time, fellas, happy Cinco De Mayo, and speaking of enjoying things, I am going to enjoy this because somebody is at their limit. I'll see you next time at the lab.